Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. It's been a while. I know you've been traveling. It's been a very busy home stretch here of the summer movie season, and lots to talk about on a very, let's say, it's complicated weekend.
It is. But
business.
Did you have a happy National Cinema Day?
Very happy. I was at home working, of course, on a Sunday, and it was really good. I think that the National Cinema Day, the idea of it is really good. I know your company had a big part in that success of National Cinema Day. If you'd like to briefly talk about that, I saw you did a post on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it was
for Airplane Media and your team.
Yeah, for the second year in a row, NATO reached out to us, the Cinema Foundation, and asked us if we would help in the organization, I guess, and the execution of National Cinema Day. And it's great. I mean, working with the team, putting it together was fantastic. And by, I think, all accounts, if you look at the grosses this morning, and we're recording on a Monday, looks like it was a big success. Just doing back of the envelope math, and we don't have the official numbers from NATO, but it looks like they were close to, if not, exceeding the numbers they had last year. And this is, this year was a little different though, because last year, if you remember, it was over the Labor Day weekend. It was on a Saturday, and there was nothing in the marketplace that was fresh.
That's right.
Top Gun in its 15th week was the number one movie on that weekend.
That's right. And the family films did really well, but it was a very different
environment.
Marketplace.
Oh, yeah.
And a different day.
Yes. So now we're talking about Sunday. And again, as we've been talking about, for the most part, kids are back in school. I think we're over 65% of the U.S. Elementary and K through 12 is back in session. So, it's not like the late shows are going to have the kind of traction that they have during what would be more of the traditional summer movie-going period. And to be able to hit the numbers they hit yesterday is a testament to the messaging of National Cinema Day. And then the other great thing that happened this year was there was a lot more running room. Exhibitors really got behind it. So it wasn't just a $4 ticket price. There were concession programs going on. There were more loyalty member programs going on. It was just for the second one, I thought they upped the game from the first one, and,
Definitely.
Can't wait to see what they do next year.
And Mike, we're on the cusp of a $4 billion summer.
I was
something that
I
stuck my neck out on that one.
This was something, if you remember, everyone, we were talking about at the beginning of May. We were rolling into Guardians of the Galaxy, and Paul said, "I think we can do $4 billion for the summer." And I know there were people who went, yeah, he's not. What's he talking about? Because if you remember too, and they were comparing everything to that really great first half of 2022 that we had. And, going back to Top Gun Maverick, $700 plus million. Everyone was looking at the release schedule going, look, it's going to be good, but I don't see the $700 million movie out there. Well, in hindsight, there wasn't the $700 million movie, but there was the $600 million movie in Barbie. And then, of course,
and the $300 million movie in Oppenheimer, just domestic. And then Sound of Freedom, Mike, just coming in to help me out. Okay. That's another $180 or so million in the domestic marketplace. But that just shows you can try and predict these things, but you never know how it's going to turn out. I think a lot of people underestimated what this summer could do. I didn't, and you didn't. So, we're right there. Now, we are about $70 million away. This is Monday, August 28th. Mike and I are talking. The box office, the domestic summer box office estimated, because we're not in the afternoon yet. I don't have the finals from the weekend, but we're going to be right at around 3.93. Wait, let me get this right. $3.93 billion from Friday, May 5th through Sunday, August 27, estimated. That puts us 67 million shy, but really, let's just call it 70 million shy.
It's a slam dunk. I'm going on a limb. It's a slam dunk we're going to get.
Wait, Mike, you think we get 70 million Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and Equalizer 3?
Yes, I do believe we will. I think, if you look at this weekend came in, $90 million. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Guys, that's almost twice as much as we did over the same weekend a year ago. It was $52 million in 22, as we talked about kind of the breadth of product that wasn't out in the marketplace. So, you're talking about, and again, everybody compares to 19. Yes, it was, I think we're running about 15% this weekend behind that weekend. But, Paul, I went out and did the numbers on the box office. So let's talk about something that is kind of missing the point a little bit. So this year, coming into the weekend, and it doesn't count the new releases that were in the marketplace this weekend.
Right.
But we were running about 31% ahead of 22. So there were 59 wide releases. And again, I know you probably have it at 58. I always count A Man Called Otto because it was always scheduled to go wide. It was just, they opened it in a limited fashion, but it was never, a question if it was going to go wide or not. And then from a box office standpoint, we're 24% ahead. We came into the weekend at a little over 6.5 billion. Last year was about 5.2 billion. And then if you want to look at 19, so this is where it gets really kind of interesting. In 19, going into the same weekend, there had been 77 wide releases. So when you think about that though, Paul, that's still 18 18 less than this year, which to me is, that tells a lot of the issue right there as well. Is like, everyone still talks about, well, we're trailing 19. It goes back to what we've been saying for over a year now, and that is it's all about the content. And it's all about, is the content in the marketplace? And what we're seeing is, when you deliver the content, whether it's Barbie, whether it's Oppenheimer, whether it's Sound of Freedom, even Mission Impossible, everyone will say, okay, it was disappointing results, still did $160 million of gross.
Every movie counts, Mike. Right. Indiana Jones, every single movie, The Flash, every movie counts. And then you have those, the Barbenheimer phenomenon, which really between Barbie, Oppenheimer, and let's just throw Sound of Freedom in there, that's $1 billion in domestic, not worldwide, domestic box office. And just to set the stage or actually go back in the time machine. So for the period running May 5 this year through July 20, the day before Barbie and Oppenheimer opened, the summer of 23 was down 7% versus last year and down 15% versus 2019. Now, this has changed a lot since Barbenheimer. Yep. So for the 115 days, I'm comparing same number of days to last year and all the way back to 2019. The summer of 23 is now almost 18% ahead of the summer at the same point last year. And, even though we're still running a little behind 2019, about 6% behind 2019. Remember, 2019 had The Lion King, little movie called Avengers Endgame. This is a terrific result. In fact, the summer of 22 did 3.44 billion, according to our ComScore data. And we're going to wind up with right around 4 billion, maybe slightly more this year. This is a huge result, Mike. And, I'm just glad it came in. It's going to come in at 4 billion because I owe people a lot of dinners if it didn't come in.
Well, I wanted to we haven't done this in a while, Paul, and I wanted to show how strong the box office is. Take a look at where we are just with the top 5 this weekend. And, you look at, you and I were talking, before we started recording about Gran Turismo. And I think, Sony realized they had a really good movie, scored an A cinema score. But they also realized that they had a marketing challenge for a movie. They had a movie that was perceived to be about a video game, and how were you going to kind of break out of that mold? And what they decided was the movie did the heavy lifting. So they rather than open the movie and hope for the best, they went into a really aggressive, kind of sneak screening program where over the last 3 weeks, they screened it, to literally thousands of people. And at the end of the day, as we see what happened, they're reporting a gross of $17.4 million, which of course, let's be fair, it includes, about $4 million of that sneak money. But at the same time, it's a great result. And the movie is, with the A Cinema score, it's going to play, and that movie is going to hold in there. And then, of course, in the second spot, only down 28% in their 6th week of release. It's Barbie again. We're talking about another $15.1 million for the weekend, $593 million of gross at this point domestically. Paul, where does this thing top out? What do you think at the end of the day?
So for Barbie, being where it is right now, I think it's just going to maybe theaters should keep it on screens for the next year. This is just an astounding performance by this film. Where it winds up, I don't know. It depends, because this is a perfect time for this movie because it does get a little quiet, although, after Labor Day. But this year, every week it seems there's a new horror movie in the mix. But for Barbie, I don't know, man. It's right now that movie. I don't know.
Can they get to 650?
I think so. They'll keep it out there long enough to get there.
And when you look at and again, you talked about the horror films, but, and again, going to digress a little bit. The other issue that is plaguing our, the fall a little bit, kind of hanging like a cloud, is what we've talked about the last couple of podcasts. And that is, the work stoppages we have with the actor strike and the writer strike. And with no end on the horizon at this point.
Mike, and I want to interrupt you real quick because it takes me back to what you were just saying about Sony getting really aggressive with the sneaks, which I think was also a result or a reason for that was because if you don't have the actors to go out there and talk about the movies, I think Sony did a great job by saying, let's just do an aggressive sneaks program. That way you make the viewer, the audience, kind of your marketing voice. And I think that really worked.
Well, let the movie do the heavy lifting is what we've said in the past when when the movie is, kind of your best asset and it delivers. To me, that is something that, lean into it, let the movie. And they did it great. And as a matter of fact, it feels to me like they felt it was so successful. They're kind of emulating that plan on Dumb Money. They kind of tweaked that a little bit as well. But again, taking advantage of a release schedule that is kind of thinned out in the fall.
And marketplace dynamics with the strikes and all that
absolutely
kind of thing. It's really, really interesting how they have to be nimble, think on their feet, the studios and their marketing departments, to deal with these situations. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Equalizer 3 coming up. I actually really love the first two movies. Both earned Mike, I'm looking at this in the ComScore data in the engine room, as I like to call it. So the first Equalizer movie came out September 26th of 2014. The final domestic box was 101.5. The worldwide was 194.5. Equalizer 2 came out July of 2018, made $102.1 million domestic, 190.4 worldwide. They're like less than 2 to 5 million apart on both the domestic and worldwide. Talk about consistency.
So let's talk domestically, because this will be an interesting one. What did they both open to?
Okay, so Equalizer, and again, consistency, right, man. Equalizer, the first one, 34.1. The second film, 36.
And
then the multiples were almost identical, nearly 3 times multiple. Suddenly, I know why they call it the Equalizer, because everything's coming out almost equal with these movies.
So I believe this one's probably going to be right in that range. I think when we look at the gross on, Tuesday
For
morning.
the 3 or the 4?
That is a good question. I'm going to go and say the 4.
Like 40 million or something.
Yeah, they 35
maybe.
to 38 for the 4 days is probably where this thing.
But I'm shocked, Mike. I'm literally looking at this in real time as we speak on the ComScore, on our interface here, and wow, they're so consistent.
And
they even changed release month, and it was 4 years later, nearly identical. And the opening days nearly identical, or at least within $1 million bucks of each other on the opening day. 12.5 million for the first film on the opening day, 13.4 million for the second.
Well, and I think, and we'll come back to the top 5 in a second, but you're right.
Yeah,
if you look at September, so September right now, not really going to feel the effects of the strike too much, because you have, as you said, Equalizer, which looks strong on the first. You have The Nun, which looks like another $30 million opener for a horror film. And then My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 with our friend Paul Brooks producing on September 8th.
Yeah.
And then, on the 15th, we have the latest in the Agatha Christie series. We have A Haunting in Venice, which looks like that will do some money. And then on the 22nd, we have the Expendables 4. We have It Lives Inside, the horror film from Neon. And then a movie that looks like, here's one that everybody had. It's interesting. So Saw 10 is coming up. Saw X, as they're calling it. The advance data that I've seen shows that Jigsaw is back. And that this movie is going to have a nice opening for the end of September here. But you also
and against Paw Patrol, so we have Saw Patrol.
We have Saw Patrol, and we have the creator from Fox. And then so September looks pretty good. It's not until we get into October that we really start to feel the effects of what's going on. Then, of course, the big shoe to drop was last week when Warner's and Legendary moved Dune 2 out of that November slot. And, so there's a little jockeying for position that's happening, on the back half of the fall into the holiday season, which hopefully, the labor issues get resolved and, we can get back to business. Because when you look at it, Paul, we were heading for, I think it's safe to say we would have gotten very close to $10 billion. For the year.
Oh, for the year. For the domestic year. And, I ran some numbers on what percentage of box office the summer represents for each year. So if we use that math, like right now, if we were to do $4 billion for this summer, then if the year did 9.5, that'd be 42% of the year generated in the 18 weeks of summer. Now, if we go back, that's typical. In the pre-pandemic era, you generally have over $4 billion each summer, summer representing anywhere from 34 to 40% of the total year box office, which shows why it's so important, the summer movie season. But you're right, Mike. I think it does put a little bit of the brakes on the idea. I think we need to temper our expectations about 10 billion. But remember, last year we wound up with 7.5 billion full year domestic, to put that in context. This year, if we wind up at over 9, which based on the summer being at 4, even if the summer was, 45% of the year, we're still talking that we'd be in that 9 billion range.
Well, the great unknown, and I'm going to put the big caveat right now, and that is with the release schedule where it is, and with movies like Dune that have moved out, or Craven that have moved out, and who knows what else is going to happen as people are kind of waiting. And granted, that also offers up the opportunity for movies we're not thinking about to come in and maybe fill the void.
Mike, you just made a great point that the movies we're not thinking about. So if you look at the fall, if you look at the films that are listed as wide releases on our calendar, there are some really cool movies on the way, Mike. I was doing kind of a fall movie preview just on my own, and I started looking at these titles. There's some really cool stuff out
well, there is,
I have to say.
There is. And of course, there's going to be some things that come out of Toronto, as there always are. And there are some surprises that are available. I mean,
Yeah.
here you got to look at last summer. I was talking to somebody over the weekend about this one, and that was when last summer kind of did what it did. It also opened up because there were, let's say, high grossing movies every week. But if you remember last year, we had one movie a week. We didn't have necessarily what I would say quantity. We had high quality that first half, but we didn't have a lot of quantity, which opened up a gap. And if you remember, there was a little movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everywhere All at Once,
that popped into the zeitgeist. And, it propelled that to all of the awards that it won, earlier this year. Again, the gap that happens this year may provide the same thing. So there could be a movie that's on the schedule that we're not looking at right now that may end up being, something that we go, wow, where did that one come from?
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many cool movies out there. The Creator with John David Washington, Saw X or Saw 10, as you said. Dumb Money looks really interesting. The Exorcist Believer, and yet another horror movie out there. Five Nights at Freddy's, another horror movie.
I'm going to highlight one that we are working on that I'm going to put a circle around that said could be that movie that everybody ends up talking about. And that is Radical. And that is from Pantaleon Films, Eugenio Derbez's first Spanish language film since Instructions Not Included, which is the highest grossing Spanish language film in the United States. It won the Fan Festival favorite at Sundance this past year. It's a movie that has a real opportunity to go out there and do something. And in this environment where I would say the seas are kind of parting for it, that could be one of those where at the end of the year, Paul, we're talking about that gave the box office a shot in the arm.
I love it. And the one for me, since we're picking films, so Alexander Payne has always been in my top 5 directors, along with Christopher Nolan, who did Oppenheimer, as we all know. And the movie The Holdovers is coming out, and it's not our friends who in The Holdovers band, but is the new directorial effort from Alexander Payne, who did such movies as Election, About Schmidt, Sideways, The Descendants, Nebraska, one of my personal favorites, and then Downsizing, which for me wasn't my toppermost to the poppermost movies from Alexander Payne. So I'm really looking forward to The Holdovers. I love his work. I love 99% of his movies, if that's even statistically correct. But that one I'm really looking forward to. I love it when independent cinema and films like that come out in the fall and the holiday season. It's a great season. If you look at the lineup, Mike, for this year, I love, again, it's sort of like for me, the fall into the holiday is like the summer, the best of summer blockbusters, but also real highlight on independent cinema, all rolled into one, whether you want to look at it as October, November, December, or just November, December, whatever time frame you choose. It's really a great time to be a moviegoer, and the lineup this year looks fantastic.
Well, and bringing up another point, and again, I kind of beat this one to death, and that was, 3 years ago when we were in the middle of, theaters being shut down and things looked terrible. The idea that we would get close to a $10 billion box office again seemed like so far-fetched. And I know that there were so many people I were talking to going, it's over. It's dead. It's all about streaming. It's going to be, no one's going to want to go to these movie theaters. And it's completely the opposite is what we've seen. And the only thing holding us back right now would be lack of content in the marketplace. And then real quick, Paul, just, as we can, finish up the top 5 just to show the diversity out there. Warner's had the 3rd highest film this weekend too, Blue Beetle, which I know took its knocks last week, but it was only off 51% this weekend, which...
Oh, that movie's getting great reviews. I hope that one just stays in there. Really good reviews for that one. And remember, the hurricane hit when that movie...
Well, but again, it's a movie that is finding a bit of an audience. And while it may be disappointing, from an overall standpoint, a 51% drop, for a movie in the DC universe, or a superhero movie is that's a great hold. And it indicates that to your point, this movie, could be hanging in there for a while. And then, of course,
hold on, Oppie.
Then we have talk about holding in off 16%, just 16%. Are you kidding me? Oppenheimer, $9 million. To your point, over 300 million domestically. There are people I know that before this movie opened said there is no shot. These are the I don't know where they were coming from, but they were like, movie's going to lose money. This is terrible. Who's going to see this? Well, evidently, a lot of people.
Everybody. Yeah, that was a movie that a lot of people underestimated. And I think also because of the subject matter and the running time, and let's not forget, a little bit of Barbenheimer magic sprinkled in certainly did not hurt. But I think that it's a thinking person's blockbuster, and it should show studios that you don't have to wait till the fall or the holiday period to release a movie like Oppenheimer. The audiences are sophisticated out there when they're looking for something like this. This fit the bill perfectly. They had a perfectly executed marketing campaign, an inspired release date, epic movie theater experience. It elevated this film, Oppenheimer, to event status. And let's not forget, Christopher Nolan has an incredible reputation out there with audiences, sort of like as a brand, like a Tarantino or the other big directors working today or well-known directors. He sits in the pantheon.
Well, and look,
certainly Christopher Nolan.
This movie doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. And, by the time you get done with, Barbie and Oppenheimer are going to represent $1 billion on their own is what it's probably going to end up being in just domestic. And then, the other thing about Oppenheimer that I really found fascinating was from a movie-going experience, it was so engaging. It was long, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it didn't feel long to me. And it was an amazing story that I did not know all the details of. And I thought they did a great job of presenting.
And I thought I knew all the details, Mike, because as I've boasted many times before, well, not boasted, but my dad was a rocket scientist, and he taught me about Oppenheimer growing up. And the movie, it's just, it really is spectacular. And look, you have to stick with it. It's over 3 hours long, but I have to think at MIT and Caltech and other institutions of higher learning that are focused on math and science that they have to be rejoicing in this, because who knows, Mike, maybe kids who see this movie, well, kids, it's R-rated, whatever, younger people who see the movie may be inspired to become scientists, physicists, mathematicians, and be involved in those fields. So,
well, and one last point on Oppenheimer, Chris Nolan's highest grossing non-Batman movie, blowing past Inception. So, and then finally rounding out the top five, just to show the diversity in the marketplace, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The third
one that's been holding in there, Mike.
Again, only off 29%, 6.1 million, 98.143 million. This is a franchise that over the course of its history, I don't think has ever gotten the respect it probably is due. And
I agree.
You look back and every time they go into this, canon of Ninja Turtles, they find, just gobs and gobs of cash. So it is just, it's something that is stood the test of time. And they've done a great job with it.
Don't marginalize the turtles, man.
People
should not do that.
And I'm going to go one lower because I always like to say never bet against the shark. And Meg 2, like hanging in there, like Paul, they're at 75 million already domestically.
Mike, that's another one. If you add together that, Sound of Freedom, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like we said, every movie is a building block. And as we are wrapping up this podcast, we have to acknowledge that we're in the home stretch right now. A week from today, we're recording on Monday, the 28th, will be Labor Day Monday. Mike, we will celebrate the $4 billion summer with actual numbers that we'll have on Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, when we have that actual full number. It damn well better hit $4 billion, Mike, because I got a lot on the line there.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if we're at $4 billion by the time we get to the weekend. Look, again, the movie-going experience that was, dead and in the water, according to many analysts, just 3 years ago, is now very vibrant, very much important. As we've said, the ecosystem has now come back to how important the theatrical window is. And, the great news about that, and I've had a lot of conversations with people both on the studio and the exhibitor side, is that, the studios have come to the understanding that there needs to be a theatrical window. The exhibitors have come to the understanding of it can be flexible. It doesn't need to be 90 days. It doesn't need to be 70 days. It can be whatever fits that movie, which I think is fantastic. And I think going forward, it just means better experience for the consumer. And, movies like Barbie, movies like Oppenheimer, movies like Sound of Freedom, we said this before, they're communal experiences. And they're meant to be seen together in a movie theater. You cannot emulate that sitting on your couch at home. You just can't. It's just something that, is unique to this medium. But when those movies perform, and when you get an Oppenheimer that does $300 million box domestically, how much more is that IP now worth to the studio on all of their downstream revenue? So, it's been said before that, the theatrical is the train that pulls the rest of the industry along. And, it's true.
It really is true. And couldn't have said it better myself. And so we'll leave it there, Mike. But I look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks. We'll have a lot. We'll do a full, summer recap and then a little fall preview on Ticket to Ride. I'm Paul DeGarabedian, Senior Media Analyst for ComScore, and I'm here with my incredible co-host, Mike President of Paper Airplane Media.
Paul, before we leave, should we drop the big news that we're going to record a live version of Ticket to Ride?
Are you sure you want to do that, Mike? We're doing it.
So, for anybody who's interested, Ticket to Ride Live will be recorded at Show East this year. So
with special guests, don't name them.
No, we're going to have several guests on the panel with us. So if you're going to be in Miami, we hope you can join us for that.
That's at the end of August. Redo that. It's at the end of October. We're right now at the end of August. But yeah, Mike, I think it was worth mentioning. Ticket to Ride Live with special guests. We're going to have a whole different vibe on this panel than you've ever seen it on any other panel at any convention, right, Mike? I'm not overselling it.
No, you're not overselling it. And, by the way, when you're done, then you can go get drinks and forget whatever it was we were talking about.
Oh, I like your attitude, Mike. It's in the morning, but yeah, feel free to go get drinks.
I like it. Paul, have a great
Mike,
week.
Thanks again.
All right.
Have a good one.
Talk to you.
See you soon.
Okay,
bye.
She's got a ticket to ride, but she don't